The water hit the laptop like a sentence with no warning. 1 second, Ella Thompson was pushing her mop bucket down the hallway of the Royal Crest Hotel's 42nd floor. The next second, the wheel caught the edge of the elevator threshold, the bucket tipped sideways, and 3 gallons of gray soapy water rushed under the door of penthouse suite 4201 like it had been waiting its entire life for that moment. Ella didn't scream. She didn't run. She just stood there, both hands pressed over her mouth, watching the water spread across cream-colored marble and pool around the legs of a desk that probably cost more than her car. A car she no longer owned because she'd had to sell it 4 months ago to cover her stepmother's credit card bill. Please subscribe, like, comment and turn on the notification bell to get notified anytime a new video is posted. I made promise to my mom that I'll reach 1,000 subscribers before Easter. This channel is my dream and I'm not giving up. If you enjoy my stories, please hit that subscribe button right now. You're not just subscribing. You're helping me keep my promise. I will truly appreciate you. On top of that desk sat a laptop. An open laptop. And on that screen, before the water reached it, before the machine sputtered and went dark, Ella saw numbers. Long columns of numbers next to names she didn't recognize. Numbers with too many zeros. The kind of numbers that didn't belong in a hotel room. Then the screen went black. Ella grabbed every dry towel from her cart. She dropped to her knees on the soaking floor and mopped frantically, her chest tight, her mind already writing the termination letter she was sure was coming. She had held this job for 11 months. It paid $14 an hour. Without it, she had nothing. No savings, no backup plan, and a stepmother who would absolutely enjoy watching her fail. She was still on her knees when the suite door opened. The man who walked in was not what she expected. He wasn't in a suit. He wasn't barking into a phone. He was wearing a plain gray t-shirt, dark jeans, and worn sneakers that looked like they'd walked through a dozen airports. He had dark hair, a little long at the collar, and the kind of quiet face that belonged to someone who watched more than he spoke. He stopped when he saw her. He looked at the wet floor. He looked at the dark laptop. Then he looked at Ella, still on her knees, a soaked towel in each hand, guilt written all over her face. He set his bag down slowly. He said, "Well, that's one way to meet someone." Ella scrambled to her feet. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The bucket, the wheel, I didn't mean to. I'll pay for it, She stopped herself because she knew she couldn't pay for it. A laptop like that cost 3 months of her salary. The man walked to the desk. He pressed the power button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. He nodded slowly, the way someone nods when something confirms what they already suspected. Then he turned to look at her, and for one long, strange second, he studied her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to find interesting. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ella. Ella Thompson. I've worked here 11 months. I've never had a single complaint. I clean the VIP floors every night from 10 to 2 and I've never." "Ella." He stopped her. His voice was calm. Almost too calm. "I'm not going to report you." She stared at him. "But I do need to talk to you," he said. "My name is Daniel. And I think you might have just done me a favor." Ella had no idea what that meant. She had no idea who this man really was. And she had absolutely no idea that the water from her mop bucket had just soaked the edges of the most dangerous secret in the city. "Daniel." That's what he told her, just Daniel, no last name, asked her to sit down. Ella sat on the edge of the white sofa like someone waiting to be interrogated, her damp uniform sticking to her knees, her hands folded in her lap. The suite was enormous. The kind of room where the bathroom alone was bigger than the apartment she shared with her stepmother and stepsisters. Crystal glasses on the wet bar. A view of the city that made the lights look like fallen stars. Daniel pulled a chair over and sat across from her. Not behind the desk. Not standing over her. Across from her. Like an equal. "Before the laptop died," he said carefully, "did you see anything on the screen?" Ella hesitated. Then told the truth. "Numbers. Names. A lot of zeros." He nodded. "Did you recognize any of the names?" "No. I only saw it for a second." He leaned back. Studied her again with that same quiet intensity. "How long have you worked this floor?" 11 months. "Like I said. So you clean every suite on this level. You see who checks in, who leaves packages, who has late visitors." It wasn't really a question. Ella nodded anyway. "Then you see things other people don't," he said. And you probably don't talk about what you see. That's the job, she said. You clean the room. You don't ask questions. You disappear. Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like recognition. Like she'd said exactly the right words in exactly the right order. I need someone who knows how to disappear, he said quietly. Someone the staff doesn't think twice about. Someone who can move through this hotel without drawing attention. He paused. There are people in this building who are stealing from me. I'm here to find out who. And I need eyes I can trust. Ella stared at him. Stealing from you. Yes. Who are you? Just Daniel, he said. And he almost smiled. She should have walked out. She should have thanked him for not reporting her and gone back to her mop cart and her gray uniform and her invisible life. That was the smart thing. The safe thing. The thing a girl with 2 jobs and no safety net was supposed to do. Instead she asked, what exactly do you need me to do? He told her. It wasn't complicated on the surface. He needed her to pay attention to certain guests on the VIP floor. Note who visited which rooms. Report anything unusual. Packages left outside doors. Guests who came to the lobby at strange hours. Conversations she accidentally overheard while cleaning. Nothing illegal. Nothing dangerous. Just watching. In exchange, he would make sure she had enough money to clear her debts and never have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries again. How much? She asked because she was practical before she was proud. He named a number. She almost fell off the sofa. That's more than I make in a year, she said. I know, he said. She looked at him for a long time. At the worn sneakers. The simple shirt. The calm eyes. He didn't look like a man with that kind of money. But she'd cleaned enough VIP suites to know that people with real money almost never looked like it. What if I find nothing useful? She asked. Then you get half just for trying, he said. And I'll make sure you keep your job regardless. Ella Thompson, who had been invisible her entire life, made a decision that would change everything. He said yes. The next 6 nights were unlike anything Ella had experienced in 11 months at the Royal Crest. She had always been good at noticing things, she just never had a reason to act on them before. She noticed that the man in Suite 4207 always propped his door slightly open when he made phone calls, and his voice dropped to a near whisper when he mentioned wire transfers. She noticed that on Thursday nights, a woman in business attire who never stayed in the hotel came up to the 42nd floor via the service elevator, not the guest elevator, and always left within 20 minutes carrying the same slim black folder she'd arrived with. She noticed that the night manager, a smooth-faced man named Gerald who'd worked the hotel for 12 years, always found a reason to be near the VIP wing on the nights that woman appeared. She wrote everything down in the small notebook Daniel had given her and slipped it under the door of Suite 4201 each morning before she clocked out. In return, Daniel left her coffee. Not from the hotel kitchen. Real coffee from the artisan place 2 blocks over, in a paper cup with her name written on it. Every morning without fail. Just sitting outside his door next to the notebook pickup spot. On the 4th night she was still in the hallway writing her notes when his door opened. You're still here, he said. I work until 2. It's 2:14. She looked at her watch. He was right. She hadn't noticed. He leaned against the doorframe. Have you eaten? I'll eat when I get home. There's nothing good open at this hour near the Riverside district. She froze. How do you know where I live? I checked, he said without apology. Not to be invasive. To make sure you were safe. Pause. I know this arrangement puts you in a strange position. I wanted to know I wasn't asking someone with nothing to lose to risk what little they had. Ella didn't know what to do with that. No one had ever worried about what she had to lose. Most people in her life had treated her losses as convenient. Come in, he said. I'll order something. He should have said no. She was in her work uniform. She smelled like cleaning solution. She was an employee of the hotel, alone in a VIP penthouse at 2 in the morning with a man she knew nothing about. She walked in. They sat at the desk, the same desk the laptop had died on, now cleared and dry, and ate noodles from a place he found on his phone that apparently delivered to anything at any hour if you tipped well enough. They talked. Not about the investigation. About other things. About the city at night and what it looked like from 42 floors up. About the books stacked on his nightstand. She couldn't help noticing them, a habit she'd had since childhood. and about the fact that he was reading 3 of them at once because he couldn't commit to finishing one before starting another. "That's a character flaw," she said. "Probably," he agreed. "What about you?" "I finish everything I start," she said. "Even when I shouldn't." He looked at her for a moment too long. "That's either admirable or dangerous." "Sometimes both," she said. She left at 3. She told herself it meant nothing. He was doing a job. He was paying her. That was the whole arrangement. But she thought about the way he'd said her name, not like a housekeeper, not like an employee, and she couldn't quite make that thought go away. On the 7th night, everything shifted. Ella was mopping the hallway near the service elevator when she heard the voice. She knew that voice. She had grown up in the same house as that voice. She had eaten breakfast across the table from that voice for 6 years. She had heard it giving orders, making demands, spinning lies into silk. It belonged to her stepmother, Vivian Cole. Vivian was standing at the end of the hall near Suite 4209, speaking in a low, clipped tone to the woman Ella had been watching all week, the one with the black folder. Both of them were facing away from Ella. Vivian was immaculate as always. Ivory blouse, silk scarf knotted at her throat, posture like a woman who had never once in her life cleaned her own floors. Ella pulled her cart back around the corner and pressed herself against the wall. She couldn't hear every word. But she heard enough. "The accounts are clean through the end of the quarter. The investor doesn't suspect anything, he thinks it's the logistics team. Just make sure Gerald keeps the records off the main system." Then footsteps and silence. Ella stood in the dark hallway for a full minute, not moving. Her heart was doing something violent in her chest. Her stepmother. Her stepmother was here. On the VIP floor. Talking about accounts and records and an investor who didn't suspect anything. Daniel was the investor. Ella went to his door at 2:30 in the morning and knocked 3 times. The signal they'd agreed on for urgent information. He opened the door in 30 seconds. He took one look at her face and stepped aside without a word. She told him everything. Every word she'd heard. The name Gerald. The black folder. The end of quarter accounts. And then she said the hardest part. The woman she was talking to, I've been watching her all week. And the woman meeting with her. Ella stopped. Pressed her lips together. Her name is Vivian Cole. She's my stepmother. Daniel went very still. She lives in my house, Ella said. He has for 6 years. After my father died, everything went to her. The house, the accounts, everything. I've been paying rent to live in my own father's home. The silence in the room was enormous. Then Daniel said very quietly, Ella, I need to tell you something. And something about the way he said it made her stomach drop. What? She asked. He crossed to the nightstand. Picked up his phone. Opened something. Turned it around to show her the screen. It was a news article. The headline read, Alexander King, CEO of King Tech, arrives in the city for summit. The photo showed a man in a dark suit at a podium. Sharp jaw. Dark hair. Calm eyes. It was Daniel's face. Looking back at her from a press photo. Your name isn't Daniel, she said. It wasn't a question. My name is Alexander King, he said. I've been staying here undercover because someone inside my company has been leaking confidential files and laundering money through hotel accounts in my name. I needed to find out who without tipping them off. He paused. I didn't tell you because I needed to know you were working with me for the right reasons. Not because of who I am. Ella looked at him for a very long time. Then she picked up her notebook from the desk, put it in her cart and walked out. She didn't go back to Suite 4201 for 2 days. She cleaned the other floors. She took her second job shifts. She came home and sat at the kitchen table in the house that didn't belong to her and watched Vivian arrange flowers and pour wine and act like a woman with nothing to hide. Vivian had been stealing from Alexander King's company. Using hotel accounts. Possibly accounts that ran through the Royal Crest, through the same VIP wing Ella cleaned every night, to wash the money clean. Gerald, the night manager, was part of it. So was the woman with the black folder. Ella had handed Daniel, Alexander, everything he needed. And he had lied to her while she was doing it. She told herself she was angry about the lie. She told herself she was done. Then Vivian came to her room on Friday afternoon and said, There's a charity gala tonight at the Royal Crest. I need you to attend with us. Ella looked up from her book. Why? Because it's important for appearances. The family attends together. You're still technically family. The way Vivian said it made clear she found the technicality irritating. We're something decent. We leave at 7. She didn't understand why Vivian wanted her there. But when Vivian handed her an envelope of cash and said, "By address," Ella's stomach twisted with the first cold thread of suspicion. Vivian never gave her money. Vivian never invited her anywhere. Vivian was doing this for a reason. She went anyway. She borrowed a gown from her coworker Priya, deep blue, simple, floor length, and did her own hair in the bathroom mirror with hands that were steadier than she felt. She wasn't doing it for Vivian. She wasn't doing it for appearances. She was doing it because she wanted to see what Vivian was planning. The Royal Crest ballroom was unrecognizable. Crystal chandeliers. Champagne towers. A string quartet playing something that sounded expensive. Every important name in the city was there. Investors, executives, politicians, journalists. And at the front of the room, shaking hands and smiling with the practiced ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, was Alexander King. In a suit. A real one. Dark navy, perfectly cut. He looked exactly like the press photo. And also nothing like the man who'd sat across from her eating noodles at 2 in the morning. He saw her across the room. She saw him see her. Neither of them moved. Then Vivian appeared at Ella's elbow and leaned close and said in a voice like warm poison, "That's Alexander King. The man whose company I've been advising for the past 3 years. I've worked very hard to build that relationship, Ella. Don't embarrass me tonight." And Ella understood everything in a single terrible second. Vivian had brought her here as cover. As a prop. A quiet, unimportant stepdaughter no one would look twice at. The perfect distraction if anyone started asking uncomfortable questions about the King tech consultant on the guest list. Ella picked up a glass of champagne from a passing tray. She put it back down untouched. And she walked toward the exit. She heard her name, her real name, not the one she'd given him in the suite, called across the room. She heard it in Alexander's voice, low and urgent. But the ballroom was loud and she was already through the door and she didn't stop. She made it to the lobby. The elevator. The 42nd floor where her cart was still parked from her shift that started at 10. She stood next to her cart in that borrowed dress and laughed. A short, quiet, completely humorless sound, because this was her life. This was exactly her life. The gown was borrowed, the shoes were too tight. And the man she thought she was starting to trust had a name she'd never been told and a face on press photos she'd never been shown. She changed into her uniform. He started to work. She was on her 3rd suite of the night when the door to 4201 opened and Alexander stepped into the hallway. He was still in the suit. He'd loosened the tie. He looked like a man who had left a room full of important people to go find one specific person, and had not second-guessed that decision for a single moment. "I've been looking for you," he said. "I'm working," she said. She didn't look up from the windowsill she was wiping. "Ella. I know who you are," she said. "You've got what you needed. Your company is going to be fine." "That's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" She turned around. "Why are you on the cleaning floor in a $3,000 suit at 11 o'clock at night?" He looked at her without flinching. "Because I needed to see you. Because everything I told you was true except my name and I need you to know that. Everything I said to you in that room, the actual words, the actual conversations, none of that was strategy. You used me," she said. Her voice didn't shake. He was proud of that. "I gave you a job," he said. "You took it knowing you didn't fully trust me either. We were both being careful." She opened her mouth to argue. "Your stepmother," he said quietly, "is going to be arrested within the next 48 hours. The data from your notebook combined with the financial records my team recovered from the water-damaged laptop. Don't look at me like that, the hard drive was fine. Gave us everything we needed. Gerald is already cooperating." The woman with the folder was a forensic accountant my company hired who turned out to be working both sides. Ella stared at him. "Vivian has been laundering approximately $4 million through hotel sub-accounts tied to my company's consulting contracts," he continued. "Some of those accounts were registered under a shell company." "A shell company," he said carefully, "that was originally set up in your late father's name." The room felt like it tilted slightly. "My father's name," she repeated. "She used his credentials after he passed." Alexander's voice was careful. The kind of careful that told her he understood he was handling something breakable. Which means when this goes public, your father's name will appear in the initial reports. Before the correction. Before the full story comes out. Ella sat down on the edge of the cart. Her legs just stopped cooperating. I wanted to tell you tonight, he said. Before the news breaks tomorrow. I wanted you to hear it from me. She looked at the floor for a long time. Then she looked up at him. You should have told me who you were on the first night. Yes, he said simply. I should have. Is there anything else you haven't told me? He was quiet for a moment. My company's stock is going to take a hit when this goes public. How I handle the next 72 hours is going to determine whether King Tech survives this intact. What does that have to do with me? Nothing, he said. And everything. He reached into his jacket pocket and set a folded piece of paper on her cart. That's yours regardless of anything else. What we agreed on plus what you actually earned. No conditions. She didn't touch it. Get some sleep, Ella, he said softly. And he went back to his suite and closed the door. Ella sat with her cart in the empty hallway for a very long time. Then she picked up the piece of paper, unfolded it, looked at the number, folded it back and put it in her pocket. She had one more room to clean. He went to clean it. The story broke at 6:47 a.m. Ella was still awake. She'd come home, changed, made coffee and sat at the kitchen table watching the sun come up over the city. She saw the notification on her phone at the same moment she heard Vivian's footsteps on the stairs. The headline read, King Tech Corruption Scandal. Consultant and hotel executive arrested in multi-million-dollar laundering scheme. A second headline appeared 30 seconds later. Initial reports link shell company to deceased businessman Robert Thompson. Family denies knowledge. Her father's name. In print. On a screen already being shared 10,000 times. Vivian walked into the kitchen in her silk robe and stopped when she saw Ella's face. Then she looked at the phone on the table. She went very still. Ella, she said, and her voice had changed. The warmth was gone. The performance was gone. What was left was cold and flat and real. Whatever you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything, Ella said. I'm reading. If you go to the press. I'm not going to the press. Ella stood up. She was taller than she'd felt in years. I'm going to my lawyer. Vivian's eyes narrowed. You don't have a lawyer. I do now, Ella said. Because Alexander King had written two things on that folded piece of paper. The number. And a name. A name followed by the words, she'll be expecting your call. Ella walked upstairs. She showered. She dressed in the nicest clothes she owned, which wasn't saying much, but they were clean and they were hers. She came back down with the small bag she'd packed sometime during the night. She wasn't sure when she decided she was leaving, but her hands had apparently known before her mind did, and walked to the front door. Where do you think you're going? Vivian asked from the kitchen doorway. Ella paused with her hand on the door. She thought about the 6 years of rent in a house that belonged to her father. The credit card bills. The missed meals. The birthday she'd spent scrubbing grout because Vivian's yoga instructor was coming over. Home, she said. Eventually. She closed the door behind her. She called the lawyer from the sidewalk. The lawyer picked up on the second ring and said, Miss Thompson, I've been briefed. Can you come in at 10? The city was waking up around her, ordinary and loud and indifferent, and Ella stood on the pavement in the pale morning light feeling something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Like herself. At noon, Alexander King stood at a podium in front of 40 journalists and made a statement. Ella watched it on her phone from the lobby of the lawyer's office. He was composed. Precise. He laid out the timeline of the investigation without drama. How he'd identified the breach, how he'd gone undercover to investigate without tipping off potential co-conspirators, how the arrest had been made. He named Gerald. He named the accountant. He named Vivian Cole. He did not name Ella. A journalist asked, Mr. King, reports indicate the shell company was registered to a Robert Thompson, who passed away 6 years ago. Is his family under investigation? Alexander looked directly at the camera. Robert Thompson's name was used without the knowledge or consent of his estate or his family. His daughter, who is not a suspect and has never been a suspect, in fact cooperated significantly with this investigation at personal risk to herself. I want to be very clear about that. Ella's throat tightened. Another journalist, can you name the cooperating individual? No, Alexander said. That's her choice to make. He took 3 more questions and stepped away from the podium. The story spun outward across the internet like ripples from a stone. And somewhere in the second wave of coverage, buried under the financial details and the corporate drama, a smaller story started to circulate. It came from a source no one could immediately trace. A clean, detailed account of what had actually happened inside the Royal Crest Hotel over the past 2 weeks. How a hotel cleaner had noticed what executives had missed. How she had documented everything, at night between shifts in a notebook slipped under a door. How without her the case might have taken months longer and might have missed the human element entirely. Ella had written it herself. At 4 a.m, on her phone in a notes app. She'd sent it to 3 journalists and signed it with her full name. By 2 p.m, her phone was ringing. By 4 there were interview requests. By 6, a national news producer had left a voicemail. She didn't return any of the calls. Not yet. She sat in a coffee shop near the lawyer's office with her bag at her feet and a cup of tea going cold in front of her, and she thought about what came next. Her lawyer had confirmed it that morning. Vivian's arrest would trigger a review of the estate. Her father's accounts, the ones Vivian had been drawing from for 6 years, had been improperly transferred. There was a process. It would take time. But there was a path back to what was rightfully hers. She had a little money now. Enough for a deposit on an apartment. Enough for a start. She had her name in the paper for the right reasons. She had, for the first time in 6 years, nothing she owed to anyone except herself. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It read, "I saw what you published. You didn't need me to tell your story." She stared at it for a long time. Then she typed, "I know. But you cleared my father's name before I could." Or even. 3 dots appeared. Then, "Can I call you?" Ella put the phone face down on the table. She drank her cold tea. She thought about a man in a gray t-shirt eating noodles at 2 a.m, telling her she had the kind of eyes that noticed everything. She turned the phone back over. He didn't call. He knocked. She was still in the coffee shop at 7 p.m. when Alexander King walked through the door in jeans and a jacket. No suit, no tie, no press conference posture. He looked like a man who had made a decision and was done second-guessing it. He found her table. He sat down across from her without being invited. Then he set a folded piece of paper on the table between them. "Again with the paper," she said. "Open it," he said. She opened it. It wasn't a number this time. It was a title. Director of Operational Intelligence, King Tech Hospitality Division. Below it a paragraph. Something about a new division. Something about using human insight and ground-level observation to identify internal risk and inefficiency. Something about a starting salary that made her blink twice. She read it again. She looked up at him. "You want to hire me," she said. "I want to offer you a partnership," he said. "You'd run your own team. Your own budget. Your own methods. I stay out of the way unless you need resources I can provide." He paused. "You saw things in that hotel that my entire risk management team missed. You're better at this than you know. And you proved today that you're not afraid to use your own name." Ella looked at the paper again. At her title, her potential title, printed in plain black ink. "This isn't because of anything else," she said carefully. "Not because of whatever this is between us. No," he said. "It's because you're the right person for the job. The other thing," he said with a steadiness that told her it cost him something, "is separate. And I'm not going to push it." She folded the paper. She held it in both hands. Outside, the city was doing what it always did. Loud, bright, indifferent, alive. People walked past the coffee shop window without looking in. The world was still turning. The story was still running on every screen. And somewhere across town, Vivian Cole was sitting in a room answering questions she couldn't lie her way out of. Ella thought about her father. About the house. About 6 years of being invisible in a life that had once belonged to her. She thought about a notebook full of observations that turned out to matter. She thought about the fact that she had done all of it, every single part of it, in a cleaning uniform on the night shift between mopping floors and emptying bins, and no one had seen her until she made them. She set the paper back on the table. She looked at Alexander King. She said, "I have conditions." Something changed in his face. Something that wasn't quite relief and wasn't quite a smile but lived somewhere between the two. "Name them," he said. "Ella Thompson, daughter of Robert Thompson, hotel cleaner, night shift worker. girl who had been invisible for 6 years and invisible no more, leaned forward and began to speak. What she said and what he agreed to and what happened between them in the months that followed, that was a different story. One that was just beginning. To be continued.